Hello, I'm Jamie. Welcome to another session of Vista Export Services. In this particular session, we're going to take users through the quick process of turning a very basic render like this into something a bit more appealing like this. So without further ado, we're going to start by loading up all the pre-rendered files from Vray. So you just go to File, under Scripts, you go to Load Files into Stack, just go into Browse. To select the entire list here, we're just going to select the first one on top, hold down the Shift key and select the bottom. So you got the entire list selected. Click OK. All the files are here. Just click OK again. And then all the pre-rendered files will just start loading up in the stack. This makes life a lot easier, especially because every single render element has its name, so you can easily just see the exact element that you're working on. So the next step is for us to just start organizing these files. We're just going to start by deselecting all the layers apart from the RGB. So to do so, we're just going to hold down the Alt key and click on that eye icon there. So everything is deselected apart from that. And we're going to create a group folder. Let's call it multimat. So this group is mainly for us to move all the multimat elements here, as you can see. So we put them there. The RGB layer should always be at the bottom of the pile, because that will be the very basic render that we'll be working from. And we're also going to change its color to red, just because it's a very relevant render element. So the rest of the render elements, we're just going to put them on a separate folder and call it Render Elements. Select the entire list and put it there. So the basic render is at the bottom, you got the render elements there, and you get a multimat. The reason why I've organized them in this particular way is just because the multimat will be used for selections, and the selections always need to be on top. Next, we're just going to start by adding a background image there, and then we move on to using a photo reference in order to get to the result we're looking for. So we're just going to come here, go File Open, and bringing the this particular image here. So that's the image that we're going to be using for the background image seen through the office space. For that, we're going to create another group and we're going to call it background. I normally start to work from the background image that you see in the distance, simply because it adds a lot to the scene, and it's easier to start tweaking the image once the background is there, because it will give you the entire perspective of what the scene looks like. And we just come here, go to the render elements, this one here, School Alpha. In here, while that particular render element is selected, you go into Channels tab there, hold down the Control key, then click on RGB. And the next thing that we're going to do is to add a layer mask into the group. So the black areas are the areas that are going to be hidden, the white areas are the ones that are going to be visible. Then we're going to turn off the alpha layer there. There you go. Back into the background. Now we're going to click on the Move tool, drag and drop the background in there. Click OK. See now? So now we're going to rename that particular layer as background. It's a very good practice to rename the layers, because the last thing you want is for every single element or layer to be called layer. So the reason why I've added that particular group with a mask is because then I can select on that background and just move it across without having to mask, and it just makes things a lot easier. So just be careful not to select the group there, just select the layer inside the group. Obviously if the layer was out of the group, this is what would have happened. You'd have to mask out things, but because it's inside a particular group with a selection of the alpha channel, it just makes things a lot easier. So now we can actually close that. To make things very quick, we're just going to bring in a photo reference that we might find to be quite desirable. Let's just bring in a few of them. So we're going to minimize these, and we're going to start with this one because it's quite similar. This is a project I worked on for an office, so they're just making some new design. So this is the current design, which was photographed by a photographer. From my personal experience, it's always a lot easier to use photo references, especially when one doesn't have the time to keep going back and forth in Max and re-rendering things that don't look right. Obviously it's good to get a render to a reasonable state, but it'll take a lot of time to achieve something like this directly from Max. So having these render elements and then Photoshop to help makes things a lot easier. Now the background is there. The first thing that we're going to do is to create a layer. Let's call a layer adjustments. So this is the particular group that I'm going to be using for curves and color corrections. Let's call it adjustments. There. So the first thing that we're going to do now, once that group is created, is to just start with curves. I really like working with curves because it's a really good tool to just get the look and feel going. Click there to create a point and another one there. I always like to work with 2 points minimum. Sometimes I might end up using a point in the middle there. So I'll start with something like this. That area there on the image, and you can just go from there. So let's leave it like this just for the time being. The next thing that we're going to do is to add a bit of color to these areas. Let's create another curves adjustment layer, curves there, and we're going to call it curves color. So instead of working with the RGB all at once, we're just going to change its colors. Same as before, we're going to add a point there, another point here. I'm just going to move it along. So we're going to try and get the colors to look closer to that. And having a photo reference, it just makes things so much easier. One particular adjustment layer that I really enjoy working with is the selective color. I'm just going to use the selective color there. I'm going to move the selective color under the hue and saturation. So I'm going to select the whites there. I can make the whites either brighter or darker. In this particular case, I'm just going to make them slightly darker. I'm going to make the column slightly brighter, like the photo reference there. And we can change the color slightly to match that. It doesn't need to be exactly like that, but something close to it. To bringing the environment a bit closer to the interiors, we're going to add a bit of glow to the windows there. But to do so, what we're going to do is to duplicate the layer, hold down the control key and click on that mask there. So you can see, and flatten the image. What we're going to do is to copy and paste. The next thing that we're going to do is to duplicate this particular layer. Choose the layer that we're working on, which is this one here, is Untitled. So the layer destination, the Untitled one, and we put it there. Yeah, we're going to leave that glow there. The reason being is because if you move that glow into there, it's just going to be restricted to the mask, but we want the glow to be seeping through the windows. So what we're going to do is to convert this glow layer into a smart layer. The reason why I've done this is because you want that particular layer to retain every single effect you apply to it. Also, even if you increase or decrease the layer, you won't change its quality. So next thing that we're going to do is to apply a blur, Gaussian blur effect onto it, as you can see, and then we're going to choose a screen blending mode from Photoshop. There you go. See the glow seeping through the window, and if you think that the glow is a bit too dispersed, we can always reduce it, and that's the beauty about using the smart layer, because it allows us to just go back and forth. We can also duplicate the layer there, but perhaps we don't need it so much. Just reduce the opacity slightly. You probably don't need it, but it's always good to try and see what works best. The photo looks a bit more desaturated than ours, so we're just going to desaturate it a bit further, so it looks a bit closer to this one, even though then most of the environment in the photo is desaturated, but the chairs seem to, or the sofas rather, seem to be quite vivid. So we're going to use the multi-matte later on in order to make that a bit more vivid. And the next thing that we're going to do is to start playing with the lights slightly. The one element I really enjoy playing with is the light selection tool, the Vray light select tool, which is quite good. To actually apply the Vray light select, you simply just create your light in the scene. You open the render setup, go to Render Elements, Add, and just select the Vray light select tool, and then scroll down, so you just add a light. There you go. If you have a complex scene with many lights, you don't want to be doing this by hand. I've got a really nice script called the Vray light select, so it selects every single light in the scene and he adds them into the render element. In this particular case, let's just delete that. What I'd normally do, you just click there. So you've got these parameters here, so all lights in the scene, you can say yes. And then obviously you want every single light to be separate. Don't do it as one element, because you want every single element to be separate. See that? I've just created a new folder here, new group. I'll call it Light Select. And this Light Select bring in the Vray lights on. So we're just going to select that. That's the Vray lights on. Just move that into the Light Select folder. So we're not using any masks because you want the lights to obviously affect the entire scene. So it looks a bit dark. We're going to go to the screen blending mode. The screen blending mode seems to work with most scenes. I would say 99.9%. So I normally use the screen blending mode to mix the lights in the scene. So before, it just makes it so realistic. Then you can also reduce its intensity slightly. And the next light select tool that we're going to be using is the internal lights. There. As before, we're just going to move it into the light select folder. Again, we're just going to go and change that to screen blending mode, just like the Vray lights on. And we can change the color of the light. What we can do is just change its color, because normally you'd want the lights to be slightly yellow or bluish, you know, just to give the effect as if there's a dome light seeping through the windows. So I'll just select the adjustment layers and choose the photo filter there. And then hold on the Alt key, and then once you see that particular icon there pointing downwards, that's the clipping mask. Just click there. So this will allow that effect, that particular adjustment layer, to only affect this particular layer here. See that? You turn it off, it's white, that is slightly bluish. So he links the environment into the office space. Just adding these two lights, the scene looks so closer to the photo reference. So now we're going to be working on the floor. So we want the floor to look closer to the photo reference there. So what we're going to do is to create a folder, a new one, group. So because we're working on that particular floor, we need to use a mask, just like we did for the background. So all the tweaking that's going to take place is only going to affect the floor. We're going to be using the Vray wire color. Sometimes when you're in a hurry, you may forget to add multi-matte of every single object that you may need. So to select the floor, we're just going to go to color range. There you go. You could always go with the magic wand tool. Hold down the shift key. There you go. You click on that group that we just created, and you are the layer mask. Let's start with the diffuse filter there. Hold on the Alt key and copy it. The reason why we're copying it is because we may need the same diffuse filter for another surface. So obviously we want to keep the original one and just copy it into the floor here. And the next thing that we're going to do is just to add a little bit of color balance there, so it looks a bit closer to the photo reference. And we can desaturate it further too. So if you were to compare it, it doesn't actually need to be exactly like the photo, but something really close. Now the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to use the same technique for the sofa. So for the sofa, we actually have the multi-matte, and one of the amazing things about multi-matte is that you don't need to go with the color range or the magic wand tool. You can simply just select the layer here, go to channels, hold down the control key. That's the red area that you want. You just hold down the control and click on it. So the surface is selected, deselect that, and create a mask for that group there, and call it sofa, or black sofa. So with the sofa, we're just going to start with the specularity. Hold on the shift key and then just bring it down there. We're just going to use the screen to blend it. We can use a reflection. It may work, it may not work. Now we're going to make the sofa really, really dark because that's the color that the client wanted. It is coming together slightly. For the orange sofa, we're just going to try and make it as vivid as seen in that particular photo. Again, we're just going to click on that multi-matte layer there. While the selection is still on, create the mask there. And let's call it orange sofa. So all you're going to be focusing on is just to make the sofa a bit more orange, really. Probably not too much. We can always use curves as well. And we can use the adjustment layer vibrance and maybe hue and saturation. Perhaps I should just make it slightly brighter. The floor sims are slightly too bright, so what we can do is to go into the sunlight there, because that's what's making that too bright. We're going to add a mask to that particular layer there, and we're going to use the brush tool to take away. So with the masks, what's black is what's going to be omitted or taken away, and what's white is what's will be brought forward. Never use the brush at 100%. You should always use it, say 10%, because that will allow you just to have control over how much you want to take away. Because imagine if you have it at 100, it just happens too quickly, and sometimes you don't have the control over what you want to keep and what you want to take away. So let's go back to say 20 in this particular case. Yeah. So with the X key, you can switch between the mask color. So white is to bring it forward, the black is to omit whatever you want to mask out with a brush. So the brush selected, the B key, and then you can just so that area is still slightly too bright, probably just the adjustment layers on top. So this is why. So every time you want to use the mask, you need to ensure that you're clicking on the mask there, because if you click in here, you're actually selecting the layer as opposed to the mask. So by accident, you can just start. See there. You don't want to be doing that. Control Z to go back. So every time you want to mask something out, you have to make sure that you have the mask turned on there. A little bit. So you just play between the light selection, brightness, and the curves there. You can always use other adjustment layers just to bring it closer and closer to the photo reference that you've got. Obviously in here you get the black sofa, which is making this area slightly darker there, but you can see where the image is getting really, really close. And on top of everything else, you can still add a little bit of contrast. You can have the contrast there. Also, we can go to the glow bit there and increase it further. And the same thing can be applied to every single part of the scene. So to do the chromatic aberration, what I would normally do is just duplicate the layer, flatten, in the channels you go to R, move it up, green, move it down, blue to the left. So now you got chromatic aberration, which you can then duplicate, bring into your main file. So you got your chromatic aberration there, and you can blend it. The darken seems to work best. So it's just been blended in there, and you can reduce its intensity as well, so it's not so intense. So this concludes our session. So you went from this to that in less than 1 hour. I hope you enjoy this particular session. If you like it, please press the like button, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.